Imagine you're walking home, and suddenly, a lion appears. You have nowhere to run and no one to call. Now imagine getting a dangerous fever, but there's no medicine anywhere. Now imagine having almost nothing to eat. Even spoiled food starts looking like your only option. And clean drinking water isn't guaranteed either. Sounds terrifying, right? But for prehistoric humans, this was reality. Predators were everywhere. Infections could become serious, and hunger could last for days. So how did humans survive all of this? And why did so many lives end so early? Let's find out. But first, like and subscribe for more stories. Let's start. Today, getting sick is usually manageable. We call a doctor when something feels seriously wrong. We take medicine and expect to feel better. And most of the time, we eventually recover. Now imagine losing all of those modern advantages. No hospitals, no modern medical care. No doctor waiting to diagnose you. No antibiotics to fight dangerous infections. And no emergency room when things suddenly go wrong. You would be completely dependent on yourself, surrounded by a world you couldn't control. Every single day would become a fight to survive. That was the reality of prehistoric life. And survival was far from easy. But here's the surprising part. It wasn't just predators threatening human life. It wasn't just the constant struggle for food. Almost everything around them could become a problem. And danger could appear when they least expected it. So how did humans actually survive? First, hunger could completely change the body. When food disappeared, energy disappeared with it. And hunting became much harder when you were weak. That created a dangerous survival trap. Less food meant less strength to find more food. And being weaker could make every danger more serious. Then there was another major threat: disease. The terrifying part was that disease could be invisible. You couldn't see the bacteria hiding in dirty water. You couldn't see parasites entering your body either. And clean drinking water was never guaranteed. Even the food they collected wasn't always safe. One wrong plant or spoiled food could cause serious trouble. Sometimes, one bad meal was all it took to get sick. And there was very little modern medicine to help. Then came infections, especially after injuries. Even a small wound could become dangerous, because there were no antibiotics to stop an infection. So humans had to depend on whatever nature gave them. And slowly, they learned which remedies might help. But sometimes, those simple remedies weren't enough. An infection could turn a small injury into a serious problem. And they had no way to know how dangerous it would become. Still, humans learned to treat wounds with what nature provided. They used plants, fire, clean water, and experience. And that knowledge could sometimes mean survival. But disease wasn't their only invisible enemy. Sometimes, the food itself could betray them. Some plants were poisonous if humans chose the wrong ones. So survival required knowing exactly what not to eat. Then there was another problem: the weather. A sudden cold spell could completely change their chances. And extreme heat could be just as dangerous. But humans had one huge advantage. They didn't have to survive alone. Groups could share food, skills, knowledge, and protection. And protection became especially important after dark, because the darkness belonged to predators too. And some of those predators were enormous. And now, we're getting to the really scary part. The first warning was often a trail of footprints. Humans knew that some footprints meant serious trouble. And sometimes, the predator was already watching. Big cats could turn a normal walk into a dangerous encounter. And humans weren't the strongest animals around. Their real advantage was working together. A lone human was much more vulnerable. So staying close to the group mattered. Then came one of nature's most unpredictable animals: the bear. A bear could be huge, fast, and surprisingly powerful. Getting too close could be a terrible mistake. And bears weren't the only problem. Hyenas could compete with humans for the same food. They weren't always hunting humans. Sometimes, they simply wanted the same meal. But predators weren't the only animals humans feared. Even prey animals could become dangerous, because hunting meant getting close to powerful animals. One wrong move could ruin the entire hunt. And sometimes, the hunter could become the hunted. The moment they noticed the predator, everything changed. Nobody wanted to be the slowest person in the group. They had to decide whether to run, hide, or stand together. Running wasn't always the smartest option. A group could look much harder to attack. And fire was one of their greatest tools. It gave them light, warmth, and a psychological advantage. Predators could see the fire too. And sometimes, That was enough to keep them away. But fire couldn't protect them everywhere. Outside the camp, humans were much more exposed. And hunting forced them to leave that safety. Because humans needed meat, fat, and other animal resources. But hunting a large animal was incredibly risky. The animal was fighting for its life too. One mistake could send a massive animal charging. So hunters had to use strategy, not just strength. They watched animal behavior and looked for weaknesses. They also learned when it was better to walk away. Because sometimes, the smartest hunt was no hunt at all. But predators didn't always wait for humans to make a mistake. Sometimes, humans simply looked like an opportunity. A distracted hunter could suddenly become the target. That's why someone always had to watch the surroundings. Humans learned to watch the sky, ground, and grass. Tracks could reveal who had passed through recently. Broken branches could reveal where an animal moved. Even silence could be a warning. Survival meant noticing tiny clues before danger arrived. Because by the time you saw the predator, it could already be too late. So humans learned one important rule: never ignore the warning signs. Because a few seconds of awareness could save an entire group. And sometimes, the safest place was simply higher ground. Rocks, trees, and caves could become natural shelters. But caves had their own dangers too. A cave could already belong to another animal. So even shelter required careful judgment. Every safe-looking place had to be checked first. Because prehistoric survival was basically one long chain of decisions. One bad decision could change everything. But predators weren't the only thing that could kill you. Sometimes, the real danger was something they couldn't even see. A tiny infection could become a serious problem, and they had no antibiotics to stop it. Even a small cut could become dangerous. And dirty water could carry invisible threats. There was no way to simply test it in a laboratory. So humans had to learn through experience. They remembered which water sources were safer. And they learned which foods were worth the risk. But food could be dangerous too. Some plants looked harmless, but weren't. Others became dangerous when stored or prepared incorrectly. And spoiled food could cause serious illness. There were no refrigerators to keep food fresh. So timing mattered when food was available. A good food season could mean survival. A bad season could mean hunger. And hunger made every other danger worse. Because a weak body couldn't handle every threat. Then came the biggest problem: finding enough food. Food wasn't guaranteed every single day. Sometimes, hunters returned with nothing. And that meant everyone had to adapt. They hunted, gathered, fished, and searched. The more options they had, the better. But sometimes, even all that wasn't enough. A long shortage could weaken an entire group. And weakness made hunting even harder. It was a brutal cycle: less food, less strength. And then, sickness could strike without warning. A fever could leave someone completely exhausted. And there was little they could do about it. Rest, water, and whatever remedies they knew. Sometimes, the body recovered on its own. Other times, the illness became much more serious. An infection after an injury was especially dangerous. There were no modern antibiotics waiting nearby. So prevention mattered more than ever. Clean water, safe food, and careful habits could matter. But accidents were everywhere. A fall could mean a broken bone. And a serious injury could stop someone from hunting. That meant the whole group had to help. Community wasn't just comforting. It could literally keep people alive. The same was true during extreme weather. Cold could be just as dangerous as predators. Heat could become dangerous too. Without enough water, the body quickly struggled. Sometimes, there simply wasn't enough water. Then humans had to keep moving. They followed water, animals, and seasonal food. But migration brought new dangers. New places meant new predators. New plants meant new food risks. And unfamiliar weather could be deadly. Yet humans kept adapting. They learned from every mistake and passed that knowledge forward. That knowledge slowly changed everything. Better tools made hunting safer. Better shelters offered more protection. And cooperation made survival more reliable. But survival was never guaranteed. Every generation still faced new threats. Yet they survived long enough to keep going. And eventually, everything began to change. Humans weren't unbeatable. They were adaptable. And that may be the real reason we're still here. But here's the crazy part. We live incredibly differently today. Clean water is everywhere. Food can be stored for much longer. Medicine can treat infections. And predators aren't waiting outside our homes. So how different would your life be without them? Would you survive 1 week in their world? Tell me your answer in the comments. And subscribe for the next survival story.